Here's where things get genuinely extraordinary. Some of the most beloved moments in Dirty Dancing, scenes that audiences have rewound and quoted and cherished for decades, were never in the script. They happened by accident. And the people making the film almost threw them away entirely. Let's start with the iconic montage. You know the one. Johnny is trying to teach Baby to feel the music, to move with it, to stop overthinking every step. He runs his fingers lightly along the length of her arm, and Baby, completely unable to help herself, dissolves into a fit of giggles. Johnny's expression shifts from patient instruction to something that looks genuinely, unmistakably irritated. Here's the truth behind that scene. Jennifer Grey is actually genuinely ticklish. The giggles were real, and Patrick's frustration also completely real. He was not performing exasperation. He was experiencing it. The cameras captured a moment of authentic human interaction that had nothing to do with anyone's plan for the scene. Linda Gottlieb, who produced the film, later said that the crew didn't even remember they had that footage. After the moment passed, they reset, shot the scene properly, and moved on. The ticklish take was essentially forgotten. It was only much later, deep in the editing room, when the film's dance editor stumbled across it in the raw footage. He brought it to the producers, who watched it and immediately started laughing. They showed it to Jennifer and Patrick, who also laughed, because they had both entirely forgotten it had happened. The decision to use it instead of the proper take was one of the best creative accidents in the film's production. That unplanned, unscripted, unintentional moment became one of the sequences audiences remember most vividly. And it wasn't the only one. There's another scene, soft and tender, a quiet interlude where Johnny and Baby dance together to an old song, Love is Strange by Mickey and Sylvia. The scene has a different quality from the rest of the film. It feels looser, more intimate, like you're watching something real rather than performed. That feeling is accurate, because that's exactly what it was. The cameras were rolling during what was supposed to be a private rehearsal session. The actors didn't know they were being filmed. What the cameras captured was unguarded and genuine. Two people in an unscripted moment, moving together without any audience in mind. The filmmakers recognized what they had and kept it in the film. The result is a scene that feels unlike anything else in the movie, precisely because it is unlike anything else. It's real. The warmth and joy that radiate from the finished film stand in almost surreal contrast to the conditions under which it was made. Dirty Dancing was shot in just 43 days, beginning in early September 1986 and wrapping in late October. That schedule sounds manageable until you understand what those 43 days actually looked like on the ground. The early weeks of shooting took place in searing heat. Exterior temperatures regularly reached 105 degrees Fahrenheit. But the real problem was inside, where camera equipment and lighting rigs pushed temperatures even higher, sometimes as far as 120 degrees in enclosed spaces. On one particularly brutal day of filming, according to choreographer Kenny Ortega, 10 people collapsed within the space of just 25 minutes. Among them was veteran actress Paula Truman, who had to be rushed to a local emergency room for severe dehydration. Patrick Swayze pushed through his own physical crises. He performed all his own stunts, including a sequence involving balance on a log. He fell repeatedly during that sequence, and each fall placed additional strain on a knee that was already in serious trouble. Medical staff had to drain fluid from the swelling joint. His commitment to the role meant he kept going regardless. By October, the heat had given way to something far worse, cold. The filming schedule had been delayed, pushing scenes that should have been captured in summer well into autumn. The production team had to become creative to maintain the illusion of warmth. Grass and leaves were spray-painted green to preserve the visual language of summer. But no amount of paint could change the temperature of the lake. The famous lake scene, the lift, the water, that whole iconic sequence, was filmed when the lake's temperature had dropped to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Jennifer Grey later described the experience as horrifically cold, saying the only reason she made it through was the combination of youth and hunger, the ambition of someone who wants something badly enough to endure anything. Patrick's account in his autobiography was equally unsparing. He used the word hypothermic without any apparent exaggeration. They shot the scene multiple times. Every single take meant going back into that freezing water. And Patrick was doing all of this on a knee that, by this point in his life, had almost ended his career multiple times. As a teenager, he had sustained serious damage to his left leg playing football. Surgery and rehabilitation had pushed him toward dance and gymnastics as a means of rebuilding strength. He became a principal dancer with a professional ballet company. Then, at just 24 years old, a routine tooth abscess turned into a life-threatening staph infection that spread through his bloodstream and settled in his already compromised leg. Doctors warned him that without immediate and aggressive treatment, amputation was a real possibility. He survived it. He recovered. But the leg never stopped causing him pain. By the time he was lifting Jennifer Grey out of a freezing lake on the 30th or so day of a 43-day shoot, the cartilage in his knee was largely gone. Bone was grinding against bone. He described the experience in interviews with remarkable specificity, noting that even though Jennifer was a small person, lifting someone in water creates resistance that makes them feel many times heavier. Every lift was an act of physical willpower that the audience watching the final film would never suspect. Picture this. It's 1987. A low-budget film hits theaters with almost no fanfare, a title that made censors blush, and a cast that nearly looked completely different from what we know today. Nobody, and we mean absolutely nobody, expected what happened next. That film, of course, was Dirty Dancing. And nearly 4 decades later, it still has audiences wrapped around its finger like a slow dance at the end of a summer night. But here's the thing. The movie you fell in love with very nearly didn't exist. And buried inside those 100 minutes of film are moments, secrets, and stories that most people have never heard. Tonight, we're cracking it all open. Buckle up, because the behind-the-scenes truth of Dirty Dancing is wilder than anything on screen. Let's start at the very beginning, with a title that caused a full-blown scandal before a single frame was even screened. When producers were preparing to release this film, the word dirty in the title raised more than a few eyebrows. In the cultural climate of the late 1980s, anything that hinted at provocative content was placed under a microscope, and the phrase dirty dancing set off alarm bells in multiple directions at once. Canadian border authorities actually detained production materials, what are called dailies, the raw footage shot each day, because officials on the other side of the border were convinced they were dealing with something X-rated. The screenwriter Eleanor Bergstein, whose own real-life experiences formed the backbone of a story, later recalled the incident in interviews, noting that it caused real delays and real headaches for everyone involved in the production. The studio, however, refused to budge. They had their title, and they were keeping it. But interestingly, the man at the center of the film, the one whose dancing would make millions of people swoon, absolutely hated that title. Patrick Swayze made no secret of his feelings during press appearances in 1987, openly telling interviewers that he despised the name and had pushed hard for the film to be called something different. He felt it misrepresented the film's tone and its heart, and worried it would send the wrong message to the very audience the story was trying to reach. But here's where the story takes a delightfully ironic turn. What was the alternative title being floated around at the time? Brace yourself. The other contender was I Was a Teenage Mambo Queen. Yes, really. Suddenly, Dirty Dancing sounds like the most elegant, sophisticated title in cinema history. We owe a quiet debt of gratitude to whoever looked at that alternative and said, firmly, no. The title stayed. History was made. Now let's talk about something that would have completely changed the fabric of this film, the casting. Because the two faces we associate so deeply with Johnny Castle and Frances "Baby" Houseman were not the only names in the running. Not by a long shot. For the role of Johnny Castle, the brooding, magnetic dance instructor who becomes Baby's unexpected champion, producers considered a surprisingly wide roster of talent. Names like Billy Zane, Benicio del Toro, and Val Kilmer all came up in discussions. And for a brief, unsettling period in the early days of production, Billy Zane was actually confirmed to take the role. Filming had begun, and Zane was attached. Then something became unmistakably clear to the people behind the camera. There was simply no chemistry between him and the actress playing opposite him. The spark wasn't there. And in a film built entirely on the electricity between two people, that's not a problem you can paper over with good choreography. Zayn was let go. Patrick Swayze, who had trained extensively at two prestigious ballet institutions, had the movement and the presence the director was looking for. Crucially, the director had also made a firm decision early on. He wanted dancers who could act, not actors who could merely pretend to dance. The